thing we haven't even talked about is we also have AI dictation ambient listening software, which basically does, for very broad spectrum, does the documentation for the patient or for the PTs or any of the clinicians, where it listens to the conversation between the PT and the patient and creates a note out of that we can input into the, instead of typing all day and on the computer all day, it allows them to listen to the patient. One, obviously, if you're coming from a business standpoint, if you're not have to do as much documentation, it allows you to freeze you up to see more patients on that end. But what it also does is it's going to decrease that burnout. Right. And so if you take out 90% of that typing, guess what? And it's a lot easier to keep staff than trying to find new staff.
So let's do the quick intros out of the way. Aaron, Averil, like introduce yourselves, like real quick background, you know, your superhero backstory in pill form, and then sort of context of what you guys get to do now in your role. Aaron, why don't you go first?
So my name's Aaron Bauer, physical therapist. I've practiced for 12 years now. And I've worked in kind of any setting there's been out there. Started outpatient, did some traveling for a while, then stuck about one clinic and basically worked my way up to the manager role. And that was my most recent job title. So got to see running a clinic from the inside, what that entails, dealing with staff therapists, dealing with insurances, dealing with documentation requirements. And so dealing with that for a few years, as most people in that position, a lot of it wears on you, drags you down. Yeah. And it just gets old, really. And so you there's kind of two ways to go. Do you want to make a difference from the inside of that clinic, try to make that clinic as best as you can? Or kind of the route I decided to take was trying to go bigger and go on the outside and try to help from the outside in. And so earlier this year, actually with the help Averil, I came to a company called Athelas, which is a healthcare tech company that really utilizes AI into practice management, really with a general thought of making a difference in healthcare, and even PT specifically, to easing kind of what I just complained about in terms of my manager role, right? Documentation, billing, insurance, all that. And so basically I got to have conversations to who I used to be every day. But the fun thing is it's helping those people try to change their life for the better. And what it in turn does is, hopefully everyone's thinking about the patient. If I change who I was 5 years ago, that in turn is going to change the patient's life.
Yeah. Averil, like, what's your story? You suckered Aaron into to a different side. What's your background?
I can give you some background on how I suckered him in here, but maybe that's for a different conversation. But my name's Averil Suure. I'm a PT again by trade. Most of my professional career was spent in Scottsdale. We kind of built this practice that I thought 12 years ago when I started practice was what exactly I wanted to do and be. And 12 years later, shockingly, everybody that told you that you wouldn't be the same human was right. And I was like, shoot, I love my career. I don't subscribe to the everyone wants to be miserable and there's all these things wrong. I felt like I did exactly what I set out to do. And didn't have those same goals. Was looking to start a family, got married, didn't have any family in Arizona where I was, and thought, like, what's next for me? Like, how can I best affect this? Our organization was acquired by our friends. I approached them with a new, more of not even a job title, but a new approach to how we could kind of build our talent in this organization and how I can affect that kind of from two different pillars. Built that, presented that, was offered that, and kind of looked at the players and kind of looked at what I wanted for myself and my family. And it just didn't align with who I was anymore. So I joined Athelas at the beginning of this year. I think I was the fifth guy at the time on our clinical team under this bigger umbrella. And, next thing you know, we're scaling a clinical team of only providers. So MDs, PTs, OTs, nurse practitioners, speech, respiratory therapists. We've scaled this team now greater than 40, and I don't think there's much even hovering over the break at this point. Okay. And I think from a professional standpoint, it wasn't that I wasn't affecting who I wanted to affect with every day on the clinical side. I just looked at this as an opportunity to not only continue building professionally within healthcare, but to also take this a completely different approach. I mean, Aaron could tell you this over a different story, but I literally called Aaron. I knew he wanted to move to Denver. I knew we needed someone in Denver. And I selfishly was also moving to Denver. And he's one of my best friends. Yeah, I was in his wedding. He was in mine in Costa Rica. And I literally, and I know his wife really well too. So I also want to keep him safe and not, piss her off. It was like, hey, bud, I have this opportunity and I don't want you to take it for 2 years because I don't need you to put you on my back and jump on a sword altogether. The opportunities just seem so incredible. I would feel guilty if I didn't at least present it to you and let you make the best decision for you and your family. So that's kind of how I feel about what we're doing and the mission, the why, and the people involved. And that's kind of how we got started. And
good.
Here we are.
Good context. All right. So now we know the players, right? It's always good to figure out who's the who. But now what's the what? So Athelas, I'm probably going to say it wrong because...
No, that's right.
All right, I got it.
That's perfect. Most people say it wrong, yeah.
What does Athelas seek to do, right? What is its purpose? What is its like, don't give me the vision statement. That's for people who know how to write more poetically. But like,
that's for you.
Some people will say, give me the elevator pitch, but I don't like the elevator pitch. I still have ADD. It's too long. I like the falling off a cliff pitch, which is I'm about to fall off a cliff. What can you get in my ear before I actually hit the ground? So what does it seek to do? What's the big idea?
Yeah, I mean, Athelas is a technology-first company that's entered healthcare. So they started in this RPM space, right? So think of finger prick blood testing. They had it geared more towards white blood cell. They're FDA approved. In exploring that, they found that the actual issue here wasn't about giving providers more things and cool things to do. Yeah. It was, how are they getting actually paid for their time? And they realized it wasn't trying to get them paid more on every RPM event. It was actually that they weren't getting paid for every single interaction with every single patient. And they were essentially working for less and less every year.
Right.
So they took this approach of, we're technology. We have super, super high level engineers and incredible people in the background that understood like how the billing cycle worked. And they took that technology and applied it to the revenue cycle, being able to essentially automate the revenue cycle from everything from eligibility to submitting claims, to working denials. And that's how they started. We don't like to approach it that way and saying like all we do is revenue cycle management. From a high end, Athelas is a technology first company that is setting out to solve the normal everyday today problems in healthcare.
Okay. All right. Good context. So now we'll zoom in because you guys are PTs. I heard you say that. You're PTs. You're like us, right? The audience. So from a business and clinical perspective, because a clinic is a business, right? We went into PT school. We thought we were going to work. We call it the Peace Corps gene. We're just going to help people, right? But to do that, you have to have a business, right? Some sort of infrastructure, right? So from a business and clinical perspective, how can tech tools do the things you're talking about? Streamline daily operations in something like where you were, Aaron, like a couple of years ago, like a busy PT clinic.
Yeah, and so basically it's giving the tools that we have in everyday business, but in the healthcare setting to basically fight the fight against insurances. And so one thing that I didn't, to be honest, as a manager, I didn't even know this before coming to Athelas is, well, guess what? We're talking about AI and if we want to incorporate in our practice, well, guess who is incorporating it into their practice?
Yep.
The insurance companies,
Correct.
Right? And so they are actually utilizing it. There's certain insurance companies, I'm not going to name names, that were using it to basically automatically do denials. And they were just using the AI, and this was even on peer-to-peer denials, right? So it's supposed to be a PT like us reviewing a case and saying, should we do more treatment? Should we not? Whatever. They were using AI in these peers. And I think it was like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Averil, but it was like 700,000. And they did the math, and it was like seconds per peer-to-peer, which should be yes, right? And so basically the idea is to give those same tools that are using against us and put it in the hands of providers, right? To fight the fight with equal power versus being, just run over by those insurance companies.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about this before. I still think my friends are not necessarily tech savvy. They'll admit that. So they look at me like I'm the person who understands AI. And even I'm saying I understand it like 1/10 of 1/100th of 1%. And I heard someone, I think I started saying or using the analogy, Artificial intelligence is like, you could chop down a tree with an axe, or you could chop down a tree with a chainsaw, and you're going to see juice versus squeeze. So it's a tool. And then I heard someone else the other day, I think it was Rory Sutherland, say, artificial intelligence isn't necessarily a tool. He's like, it's an agent, because it's the difference. It's like the chainsaw still needs someone to run it. This is the kind of thing where you can teach it to do something, set, push, go. And not only will it just go around the track like a train, like a toy train, it'll make decisions and change course. It will go off the tracks if you give it parameters, and it can even react to things that you haven't taught it yet. So that's where it's not a program. It's not just going to run. It thinks and moves and acts. And this is eventually we'll just get Skynet and the Terminator. But you're now highlighting like this is accessible to people who are just PTs. And I'm using air quotes on a podcast, which is now you can be using it. And I don't want to put words in either your mouth, but it feels like if you're not using it, you are trying to cut down a tree with a spoon, while the people who are also in your sphere, other companies, insurance, whatever, they're cutting it down with robot chainsaws.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you work in outpatient PT, you interact with your EMR a lot. You deserve to have an experience that's seamless and integrates all the things you might need to do, like a patient portal, marketing automations, and billing, all in one, all at an unbeatable value. That's what MW Therapy does. Switching over is a breeze. Take a test drive right now and see what you could do with them at mwtherapy.com. Now, where's your PT career license taking you? Get a driver's license, you can drive wherever you want. If you're a physical therapist with a license, you can provide physical therapy wherever you want. That's what Jackson Therapy Partners is there to do. Extraordinary patient care adventures with Jackson Therapy Partners. Perfect for PTs eager to make their mark. Do what you want to do, where you want to do it. See where your skills can take you at jacksontherapy.com. And if you've heard about this thing, we've had it on the show before. It's called remote therapeutic monitoring. And it could boost your clinic's revenue and help more people. Those two things are good. Find out how Physiotech can help you do that. That is Physiotech at their website, physiotech.ca. That's physiotech.ca. Maybe boost your revenues, your clinic's revenue by $290 per patient per quarter now with Physiotech.
But I think another thing to jump in there too is that, and this is a kind of a pushback from healthcare in general, because we don't like to change anything, is
No.
there is folks that actually think that technology is going to replace human beings.
Yeah.
Right. And a good friend of mine, he's actually now working with, I think you know him well. You know Anand Choksi, you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's we actually just brought him onto our team. He says hi, talked to him earlier this morning, said we were going to talk. But it's not technology replacing people. It's the clinicians, it's the practices, it's the leaders that understand the use case of the technology that will replace everything. Right. So we're not looking to take humans out of the equation. We're looking to make humans as efficient as we can so they could spend their time where it's the most necessary. And we have the data to support, hey, the tech can do this very easily, efficiently, without error. They don't take vacation, they don't get sick.
Right.
But we need humans here.
Right.
If we give the humans time, they can spend time there.
So we talked about the financial strain before we actually hit record. This is why I should just hit record as soon as people pop on. But we talked about, hey, we all want change and we complain for change. And when we're presented with an opportunity to change, myself included, we typically just say, I will, just not right now. And I heard a great quote. I love stealing quotes. I just never remember who said them, but it's, you won't take action until the pain of inaction is greater than the pain of action. So it's like, I'm not going to get off the couch until it hurts so much that I just feel out of shape or whatever. I'm not going to do it until that hurts more than the actual thing. So we'll talk about a specific pain, financial strain of decreasing reimbursement. We can get mad at it all we want, yelling about it and change it though. So the rates are a growing concern for PTs. What role do you two see technology playing in helping clinics maintain profitability without compromising patient care? Because if you can't do that, you're not going to exist. Then there's no patient care. So you have to be paying attention to this if you are listening. So when I throw that out there, no pressure, but how would you sum that up, or what should we be doing in that area?
And Jimmy, I love that, because that's where we start. Again, how Athelas approaches it, right? It's education. We have practices, good friends of mine, colleagues, friends, kind of in between. They'll tell me they have a biller. I'm like, hey, this is kind of the space where I'm like, oh, I'm good. I have a biller. It's like, of course you do. The lights are on, submit claims. I hope you have a biller, right? So even in our essence, it's education. Like when we talk to a practice, we take an approach. We don't have any money involved. It's completely complimentary, no obligation. We just jump in with the practice. We pull their data and we build them this dashboard, and it's for education. It's how are you actually doing? And they have no idea. I'm talking about on paper, successful practices. Everyone knows who they are. We rip off the Band-Aid. We pull every single metric that you possibly could think of that would show, is your process in a place where you're pushing success for the practice? And the overwhelming answer is absolutely not. And then we can walk them through these, normal metrics for business, but for some reason, healthcare, it's the sexy thing to talk about, like transparency. It's like, how are you collecting based on your locality, right? How is your buckets of work of claims looking? Are you getting paid before this dark 90-day period where insurance companies have just decided they're not going to pay us?
Yeah, it's wild.
How are you doing with every code? How are you getting paid with every payer? And again, I'm not talking about the people who know they're bleeding. The worst cases we have that turn into these outrageously lucrative partnerships for these practices to work with us is because they're like, oh my God, I have no idea that I wasn't working. I have to do 2 or 3 more surgeries every week. I got to see 10 more patients. I got to ask my staff to pick up Saturday mornings so that we can pay the front desk because we're making less and less and less. Right. So that's our essence. It's education. You can talk all you want about AI. You can talk about all these different tools, these different add-ons you could have your practice to be more ROI, revenue generating streams. They have no clue how they're doing with every single interaction. So that's our basis. This is what it is. This is how it feels. I'm sorry sometimes. Right. And then we can walk through the tech and then educate. This is how the tech moves those numbers in ways that matter for the practice, right? Which direction they need to move.
Let's talk about the tech in a second. But what's the reason? Is it a blind spot? Do we just jump in and we have our eyes set on helping people, so we just run as fast as we can to get to that and we skip steps? I mean, what you're doing is like bar rescue for clinics, right? You're saying like, you're going to blow open your books and we're going to show the processes and you tell me how much you're paying for chicken. And we're going to be like, dude, you got to look at these things. But a lot of times we don't like to look under the bed because that's where the dust bunnies are. So what's the reason? Right. Are humans humaning themselves into this problem?
I'm going to let Averil answer this one because I know who he's going to blame for this.
Well, yeah, don't get me started because I have good relationships there. But look, providers need to be good at providing healthcare. This is our fault by putting healthcare in the same bucket as Apple, as Microsoft, right? If you take stakeholder value and put it next to what is the provider's goal there, they could not be more separated. What you're going to do that's the best decision to make money in your practice has nothing to do with the best thing for the patient. It just doesn't. And we're trying to figure out how it does, right? If someone walks in and the best thing you could possibly do for them is some rehab and some time and some scaling back of some activity, but you could give them an injection and you can't get sued and I can make $500 on there. Like, you've just put this practice in a big conundrum because it's this continuum of what's right. It's literally putting providers in a position where they don't have an MBA, they haven't ran businesses, and then you're asking them to take the care that they're rendering, but also asking them to remember that oath that they took at the same time. It's just bandwidth. How do you do that?
Right. All right. So let's talk about how you actually do that. Do you plug into an EMR? Are you an EMR? I mean, I on purpose do a little bit of research on companies, but not too much because I like to come into it with a little bit of naivete because the audience typically does too. So if they knew nothing, if the first time they were experiencing this was this 17 minutes that we've gotten to right now, how do you explain, like, tactically, what do you do and how?
Bar, you want me to jump on this?
Yeah.
So our approach is, again, it has to work for the practice.
Sure.
I wish you could buy this off Amazon and plug it in and it just worked for everybody, right? We would all make way more money. It'd be efficient. It would be something that everyone could use. Unfortunately, healthcare, if your practice was across the street, you were a competitor, we had the same payer mix, same size, we're going to operate very, very differently. That's just how healthcare is, right? So our approach is more taking a provider's EMR that is web-based. So as long as we can get into that EMR, we basically build out, I'm not going to call it an integration because integration means you put buttons on EMRs, but we basically build through a technology where we can capture the data, and we pull the data all day long onto our system. And the practice essentially lives on our system for every single thing they do in terms of eligibility to claim submissions to denial management.
Got it. So
now what it does to,
you've got a way to sort of pop open their hood and take a look without actually having to necessarily formally plug in.
We don't have to do any of it. In fact, when we work with a practice, really all we need to do is have a BAA sign, because no one likes to get in trouble by HIPAA. It's kind of a big deal. And then basically all we do is get like login credentials where we can pull the data from wherever payments are posted, and we can build them that dashboard.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I'm seeing how this is going to help. What are some of the successes? So now we understand who's involved, what the problem is. Right now we're charting out a good story. Every problem, or every good story, has to have a problem, right? Frodo's got to destroy the ring. I understand what the problem is, and now the journey is set forth. What are some of the successes? Like, you guys said we can do this. How has it worked? Like, you don't have to use real names or anything like that. You can anonymize it, but what does success look like? What's the after photo and the before and after photo?
Yeah, I mean, I love that question, because I would say, who's asking me that question? Because if I talk to a front desk, right, there's too many answers there. But if I have a front desk person, right, and they run it, that's a totally different answer than talking to the person on the top who runs the business. But at the end of the day, our metrics tell us that 95% of our partners are making more money per claim. And how are they making more money per claim? Well, our first pass rate, right? So submitting cleaner claims, having denial management in real time. So essentially what we're able to do is take an AI and attach it where when a denial comes in, we grab the denial, we match it to the most up-to-date payer policy, and we constantly are resubmitting. But we're not doing this one at a time. We're taking a denial, we're matching it to all the other denials that have the same reason, the same CARC and work codes attached, so the same fix. We bundle them together and then resubmit them. That has to happen in real time, because insurances on a Wednesday can decide they're going to change payer policy. It's like hitting the ball to third base. They punt it into left field and say, you're out. And you're like, we got to throw it to first. Well, not today. You don't like it. Stop playing baseball. Well, I can't stop playing baseball. I can't stop taking Blue Cross, because Blue Cross is 90% of my payer mix, right? So as we're constantly doing that, really where the sauce is our rules engine on the front end. So as we learn new rules in real time, we're constantly updating the front end with essentially an AI rules engine. So tomorrow, Jimmy, when you submit 20 more claims with the same payer, they're leaving cleaner. So it means first pass rate's higher. Our denial rates are less than 2% across our platform. We have $5 billion as of today. That's growing, but as of today, there's $5 billion going through our system, right? You're talking about claims hitting 90 days. That's work you've done. You've worked for it. You've done the right things. You just couldn't do this denial management type of thing as fast. Our denials, in terms of percentages, if you look at like the percentage of 90 plus day money, for us, that benchmark is 10% or lower. So in the single digits, which just means it's a fancy way of saying the money's going into your bank account and not into a payer's bank account because they just made it hard on us.
Right. All right.
And then I'll touch on that a little bit. So like exactly what he's saying is true, but what does that look like real time to the clinic? And kind of, we said it earlier, what it's doing is giving the power back to the providers, right? And so what it does is it allows them to grow how they want to grow, right? We've had clinics that the increased profit has allowed them to open another location and grow as a business. We've had business, and I've seen this on the PT side of things with the decrease in reimbursement, where they're struggling to pay, right? And so what are they doing? Unfortunately, we see this a lot, is they're cutting staff positions like front desk, techs, which what is it? That's taken away from the patient experience.
Quality,
but this increased profit, what it does is it gives you the ability to make cuts in the back end that is not going to take away from the patient experience, which in my opinion is the most important part, right? And so
I was going to say, it sounds like you're getting paid more consistently at a higher rate faster.
Yep. And then I would also add, because this is my experience as a clinician, I have no idea what my biller's doing. You have a third party, it's expensive. I think they're doing good, but then they send you a bucket of claims every Friday, and it seems like it's the hardest bucket of claims to work, right? So a huge component of what we do, because we're able to pull data all day long, is we're able to give practices something that seems like the holy grail, right? Which is real-time data and analytics, transparency into what's going on into this weird thing known as RCM. I mean, I had a call the other day with I thought he was like the who's who of this practice. They had no idea what RCM even meant, right? Didn't know the acronym, and I'm pretty sure he was in charge of it. Scary stuff, right? But we're able to show a practice in real time, like what's going on with every payer. Like,
Sure.
how are you getting paid on them?
Right.
What do those metrics look like? It's kind of doing away with we have a third party and we have an account manager. In 3 weeks, we can have a meeting and go over reports. This is like, I have access. I can log in whenever I want. It'll be different this afternoon. If there's a report there that I want to know. Ooh, that was kind of cool.
Nice.
You guys see that on my screen? If there's something you want to know, there's a report there, and I can download that report, put in the parameters that I want. And it's, again, real-time actionable data to give business owners tools to actually make business decisions.
Right. Instead of guessing. Yeah. You brought up staffing, which is also, outside of paying, another issue that big companies come to me about and want to do episodes about, or want to talk to me because I've talked to other people. And the answer usually is just like, I give a very PT answer too, which is, it depends, right? What's the setup? But staffing shortages have been this challenge across healthcare and other industries. We'll pivot a little bit and go away from payment and denials to this. How do you think clinics can leverage technology to operate more efficiently with fewer staff?
So the increased payment, obviously, but also one thing we haven't even talked about is we also have AI dictation ambient listening software, which basically does, for very broad spectrum, does the documentation for the patient or for the PTs or any of the clinicians, where it listens to the conversation between the PT and the patient and creates a note out of that we can input into the EMR, whatever EMR they may have, to, again, let the PT do more of their work, right? Instead of typing all day and on the computer all day, it allows them to listen to the patient. In terms of staffing, this can work kind of twofold. One, obviously, if you're coming from a business standpoint, if you're not have to do as much documentation, it allows you to freeze you up to see more patients on that end, right? Not a lot of PTs are excited to hear that, but if we're looking purely at a business position, it gives you that opportunity. But what it also does is it's going to decrease that burnout, right? So we both complained about documentation at the beginning of this podcast, right? And so if you take out 90% of that typing, guess what? That burnout is going to go away real quickly, right? And so then we don't even have to talk about recruiting staff. Obviously, I think it's kind of a sexy thing that it does help recruiting, but guess what? You're not going to lose staff because you're not burning them out. And it's a lot easier to keep staff than trying to find new staff.
Yeah, I forget who was the person talking with me, because I talked to a few people, is they took thousands of PT notes and ran them through artificial intelligence, and they found two main things. Number one, we were documenting a lot more than even the requirements of the insurance company. So we might bitch about having to do this, but we were doing above and beyond because we want to be safe. I'm using a lot of air quotes in a podcast. We wanted to be safe. So you're doing more than you actually have to. I would like to do enough than I have to, right? I would actually like to just talk and have that done for me. So it feels like you're saying that it does that. And the other side of that report was PTs were providing more services. They were doing more, but not billing for everything, because I want to be safe. Because everything we were taught to is make sure you can defend it if an audit were to occur. So we were doing too much and charging too little, and then complaining about declining reimbursement and things being and the burden of administrative burden. So if you actually did what you were supposed to do and charge what you're supposed to charge, you'd earn more and do less. It sounds like we're going to get better at doing that. Maybe not on day one, but it sounds like tools like this are also, I don't think you really said it, but this is where the marketing guy comes in. That's a draw. If I'm a brand new PT and I have a choice between working for clinic A and B and everything else is equal, and one of them has this thing that's going to make my life feel like I can breathe a little easier and the other one doesn't, it tells me something about that clinic. And I know on day one, I'm going to have these better tools and I want to be a better clinician and work more effectively. It feels like it should be a recruiting tool.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
And Jimmy, you also outlined like patient experience, right? This isn't just about the patient to provider interaction. In fact, I would challenge most negative Yelp reviews or wherever they come from these days is probably more for the other stuff, not the actual
Like what?
Aaron Bauer. Like, what do I owe? Right? How do I get my payment information? What's going on with my claim? How do I schedule? What are my benefits? How come you can't run my benefits? What do you mean I have to go run my benefits?
So how does this
Right?
help that?
So what we're doing on when we partner with the practice, and we don't throw that term around loosely, we partner with practices. We're not giving them some software to use that hopefully it goes well. We're approaching them from a transparency point to an automation point to like white glove service. Why? Because we're dealing with humans, and humans are impossible. They're unpredictable.
Yeah.
They have bad days. They have good days. You just don't know where they're coming from. But the tools that we're able to give practices are not just for the clinicians. It's not just for the business owners, but it's also for the front office folks. What can we automate in their day? What more time will they have if we run eligibility on every single patient? And if patients walk in, we have a live eligibility check. Doesn't seem like a big deal for me. I'm a clinician. I didn't have to deal with it. If they were mad one day having a bad day, no, it's because they're logged back with a bunch of denials they're not going to get to. They have a line of angry patients. And for some reason, we can't tell them what's going on with their claim. And now they think we're in bed with a big insurance payer.
Right.
They don't know that we're just as unhappy with that interaction as they are. But what our tools put into place is like collecting payments. You guys know this in PT clinics. It's almost like, it's like uncomfortable. Like, pay me. Yeah, pay me later. If you don't collect at the time of service the money, you're probably not getting the money. And then, God forbid, you don't have the medium that they prefer to get you their money, a pay to text, a letter in the mail. If you don't have that method, you're even less likely to get it. Right. So what we're also doing, again, is we're not just approaching it from, let's put this piece there, let's bolt it onto what you're doing, because we already have the data to show people it doesn't work that way. It's an everything, all-inclusive. We can give the providers tons of automation in terms of front staff interaction. So guess what? The front staff can also treat the patient, right? Air quotes again. They can actually spend time with the patient, listen to the patient, and take care of them instead of sitting there like this, giving them side eye. Yeah. Anyways, hold on, there's a call. I got to get through all these things, or my boss is going to be pissed we didn't get the money.
Right. Understood. Good. Love that answer. Last thing I'll throw out to both of you, as this happens, as early adopter and laggards and all those terms we learned about, integration and new ideas, right? As PTs, they will do it. It's just, are you going kicking and screaming, or are you just going to wait until it's too late? As they integrate more tech into their practices, how should they balance this thing we were sort of just talking about, personal touch in patient care, with maximizing the efficiency that tech offers? Like you are literally at this intersection of doing this. Any words of wisdom that you'd want to leave with clinicians who are maybe on the edge of a diving board going, okay, I know I'm 30 minutes in this episode, I'm still here, which means I know I should jump. It's just, I'm wondering how cold the water is. What would you say to them?
I like just using an analogy, right? And so we're at the kind of precipice of, I know we're kind of all old enough, but I remember life before some smartphones, right? I remember before smartphones, I remember texting and I remember I didn't need a smartphone, right? When smartphones first came out, why do I need email? Why do I need the internet? Why do I need all this? It's useless, right? Now, I couldn't imagine life with a flip phone, right? We literally couldn't do our job right now without a smartphone. And we are at that, I believe, that, here in, it's not even going to be that long, here in not 5 years, maybe 2 years, it's going to be the norm. And it's just coming. And Averil kind of mentioned it earlier. AI is not going to take over, right? It's going to be adopters of AI are going to replace non-adopters. It's that simple. It is an amplifier of our skills, and it's not a replacement. Because coming from the inside, it is not a replacement. It's never going to, even dealing in business, that personal touch, that human touch, especially in PT, is so important. That will never be replaced. Yeah. It is going to amplify your skills. It's going to give you better patient experience. It's going to allow you to listen better to the patient, to provide better care. And in turn, the patient's going to accept better care. So that's what I feel.
I was really good. Remember T9? Remember how you texted with T9?
Yeah, it was sick. I was good at that.
I was pretty dominant at that. That was pretty good.
Jimmy, go ahead, Sabar.
I was going to just tell a side story. In college, I had friends that it was just the keyboard. Yeah. They could watch the professor and just text
I
on their
was
phone
there.
without
Oh
even
yeah.
looking
I
at
could do
them.
that now. I could do that now. I still have that muscle memory.
Word.
And Jimmy, I would even go more foundational for that person on the edge of the diving board. And again, not to get like sentimental and like, but we do this in our interviewing process. Everyone we've brought in and our team is clinical, and the first thing we ask them is like, what's their why? If you have a clinician, I mean, again, I've had conversations with providers and they're in tears when we kind of figure out how we can help them because they want to do this thing they got trained for. And guess what? They're world class at it. And guess what? It doesn't matter because a claim is a claim, right? So I would back up and even say, what is your why? That clinician, I promise you, did not go to school to be a billionaire.
No.
That's not on their list of things. But I promise you, what they did want to do is get paid fairly for their service and be able to spend time with their patients, their families, their friends, build into the community. And what we're doing is so aligned with the why our clinicians were in clinic. We're trying to give these providers the things that they need on a day-to-day basis so they can do their job. Because, and I say this all the time, Aaron's heard me say this. I call him Bauer, so it's weird that I'm calling him Aaron right now. His name's Bauer. But like, you don't want the fourth best brain surgeon when that time comes for you.
Right.
Like, you don't want the first three to have, they were just innovative enough to say like, this dance isn't for me. I'm going to go work for Google or, run Jimmy's podcast because it's too big now. You want those people to be so passionate about the care they're delivering for the why. They want to deliver high quality care. So it's, for us as clinicians, it's very, very easy to have these conversations, to sit down and again, maybe get a little bit too emotional about the conversation. But if we pretend like that doesn't matter and that we could just continue with how we're doing things now, either one, you're not a clinician, so you don't understand, or you're just not paying attention. So again, that's kind of like where our ethos is and kind of where, our approach comes from.
Good use of the word ethos. I love ethos. Last thing we do on the show is the parting shot. It just gives you guys a chance for a mic drop moment. Sum it up. You can repeat something you've said already just to emphasize it, but we'll go with Bauer first. What do you got?
I would just say is, it's AI is one of those things that is very, thanks to Terminator, has some very negative connotations.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it's coming along and we want to adopt it and just embracing it. And to be honest, it's going to make your life better. It's not going to make things worse. It's going to make you better. Kind of to just touch on what Averil just said, it's going to allow you to accomplish your why, right? So like every PT that is listening to this went to PT school because they cared about patients. That's why I love working with PT specifically. Yeah. We work with everyone, but you can tell a PT versus like a doctor, chiropractor, I don't care who it is, because we care. We truly care about the patient, right? And we want that experience to be the best possible. We want to give the best care possible. And to be honest, it's probably why we're where we're at, because we care about that more than the actual business side of things.
Peace Corps gene,
and
man.
So exactly. And
yeah,
so it's gonna embracing the AI is not, it seems scary, it seems like a leap, but it's gonna allow you to accomplish your why, to be you, to be better at you, right? Versus just getting buried by everything we've talked about during this podcast.
Averil, parting shot.
Yeah, I mean to piggyback on that a little bit, it's like the whole we talked about this earlier, but like we can't keep approaching this problem how we've been approaching it, right? I even have conversations all the time where people want to reference these dinosaurs in the industry and get their opinion, and part of me is like, are we being too slow to change because we're getting in our own way? And again, no one's going to save what's happening right now in healthcare. And again, our mission is, I'm not going to air quote the change healthcare, but our mission is to approach this from a completely different direction and say, hey, this is broken and we need to fix it. And the only way we're going to fix that is taking really, really smart, driven people that are aligned on the why and be able to get together, collaborate, stop doing what we've been doing and make this happen. Because we have the data, we have the tools, so we need to kind of bind together there and just be able to highlight the things that are missing and again attack it from a different direction, because seeing more patients, adding a force plate, adding blood flow restrictions and some other modalities, you'll get the barkers out of the bleachers saying that there's no efficacy there in any of that, but patients like it so you can make money. I mean, that is not the right way. The right way here, right, is taking what we're doing, the value we bring, and making sure that the care we're rendering continue to support us rendering high quality care.
Athelas.com, AI-powered operations for healthcare. Appreciate you guys weighing in on this. I think that the end of the diving board is very crowded these days. They understand that they need to do something, but humans are going to humans. So they're saying, okay, I'm going to wait till enough people have jumped. And I think what I'm hearing is you got to do something. You might as well go with someone.
People are jumping.
Yeah, people are jumping. Gentlemen, appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it.